Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast where entrepreneurs, founders, and ambitious professionals come to learn from those who have walked the path, navigating challenges and achieving success. Whether it's thriving in business, pivoting, scaling for growth, fundraising, or finding work-life balance, dealing with loneliness, adversity, or overcoming personal struggles. Our guests share the insights and strategies that have empowered them to level up. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Leanne Linsky. Leanne is someone who knows exactly what it means to pivot, adapt, and build something from the ground up. She started as a comedian, performing and producing shows in New York and LA. But when she realized the traditional comedy industry wasn't built for long-term success, she took matters into her own hands. She went back to school, earned a master's in innovation and entrepreneurship, and founded Plauzzable, a groundbreaking platform that redefines the comedy space. In this episode, we're talking about what it really takes to turn a passion into a business, the hardships of entrepreneurship, and the lessons she learned along the way. So if you're thinking of starting your own venture or you're in the thick of building something, this episode is for you. Hi, Leanne. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm always excited to talk to other founders and walk through their journey to see what it was like, going through the whole entrepreneurship and founder journey and learn a couple of lessons in between. So I'm excited to get into it.
Thanks. Let's go.
Yeah. Your journey has been anything but conventional, from performing stand-up comedy to launching Plauzzable. What inspired you to transition from comedian to an entrepreneur? And was there a moment that solidified your decision?
Yeah, what a great question. It's not something I had planned on. Like some people, they've known their whole life they were going to do something. This was not on my
Yeah.
bingo card, as everybody says now. Um, but what happened is I was trying to solve some of my own problems that I encountered as a performer. And it really happened when I moved from New York City to California. And initially, the idea of doing something online, because this is 2014, 2015, when I made this move. So that was before COVID, and people weren't doing things online. But I was like, how
Mhm.
else am I going to keep in contact with all of my fellow comics on the East Coast? Maybe we could do Zoom or Skype, because I had been using both for a day job at that time. And then people were
Mm.
like, and I was like, yeah. So fast forward a couple of years in August of 2019, I was spending more time on the freeway than I was on a stage. And I was like, this is bananas. Like geographically, this is not at all like what I was spoiled with on the East Coast. So how do I get more time to work out my jokes? How do I create more opportunity and performance and connection? And that's when I decided to cobble existing technologies together. And from there, people are like, yeah, this is really cool. This is something. And of course, COVID hit and everybody started going online, which was great. But I was like, how do I fix the problems now for entertainment? Because although the existing technologies like Zoom and video conferencing are great for meetings and basic connections and whatnot, they're not exactly designed for entertainment. So what if I
Mhm.
could fix that and a way for performers to monetize their money that's super simple and transparent without like all these hoops to jump through and requirements to have? And that's where it stemmed from. I was just basically solving a problem, and then I'm like, "Well, that fixed that, but now I have this problem." So it basic problem solving, long answer, I guess, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I get it. So you were a little bit ahead of your time, and then COVID hits, and now you're like, I can sort of continue working because you had been ahead of your time. But tell us a little bit about Plauzzable and exactly how it works and what it does.
Sure. So if you think of things that you're already familiar with, let's say like a Zoom where people can all log on and see and hear each other at the same time. And then you think of something like an Etsy marketplace where
Mm-hmm.
you have people creating goods and services to be purchased and then people shopping. So Plauzzable like incorporates both those ideas, whereas you log into Plauzzable either as a consumer of comedy or a comedian who provides the comedy. And when you log into an event, everybody can see and hear each other like we do on streaming tools such as this. However, um, we have the screen design different. So it's a setup so they can bring multiple performers to the stage and one person has focus. So we're not looking at who's cleaning out their closet while someone else is talking, those kind of
Mm-hmm.
things. But
Mm-hmm.
the audio and stuff is designed so that you don't miss a punchline and things don't cut out because someone laughed or coughed or something like that. So we
Mm-hmm.
designed it in such a way like that. So if you think of those things, but we also provide scheduling services. So there's if you sign up with a comedian account, now they have access to the virtual calendar and they can create their show listings. And there's a directory of all the shows and events that are happening on Plauzzable. And they can create a performer profile page. So you can look and see what they're all about and where have they studied and what other things have they done, what kind of comedy do they do. So when you think of it like LinkedIn, you have your profile page. They
Mm-hmm.
have a performer profile page. There's like a TV guide type show listings, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
event
Yeah.
listings. There's a directory of all the comedians. There's the virtual stages that we provide. And then we also provide ticketing services. And that's where people can actually make money for their comedy. They can charge a ticket price. And that way they don't have to cobble together a bunch of different technologies like Eventbrite or some of the other things where they can sell third party. Everything's all in one place. So when you think
Mm-hmm.
of like going in and doing a pay-per-view on Netflix, it's right there on Netflix and you check out on Netflix. Ours
Yeah.
is like that, but it's all live in real time. Nothing's pre-recorded.
Okay, cool. So, what has the adaptability for comedians and consumers been like? Because they're both different, right?
Yeah. So I did a lot of research before as I was thinking about this. And then as I was building it, constantly talking to both types of users, consumer, the fans, and also the comedians. And so um, in comedy, our thing as a comedian is we want the immediate response. We don't want to have to sit back and wait for likes or comments and things. So the immediate response was key. And then with fans, in my research, people like to watch comedy with other people. They prefer that
Mm-hmm.
when it's live, pre-recorded, it's, whenever, but when it's live in real time, they prefer to watch it with other people, which I was like, oh, that makes sense, right? You want to
Mm-hmm.
hear other
Yeah.
people laughing because someone else laughs. It kind of gives ourselves permission to laugh out loud and actually enjoy it in the moment. And there's something engaging about that. So people preferred that. So I really listened to their needs. And also while building the actual technology of like making it intuitive and whatnot. So of course there are some people who are like now because of COVID, they're used to Zoom and they just click the same link over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Ours isn't like it isn't Zoom. So when they hear online show, they assume it's Zoom and then they show up thinking, where's my Zoom link? And it's not a Zoom link. You just log into
Right.
Plauzzable and go to your event. So a couple of steps are different. And so people aren't used to that. But I think it's like anything else, people adapt. And then there are, I think, some people who, there's early adapters and then the people somewhere in the middle and then the people who are the last to get on board.
Yeah. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in getting Possible off the ground, and how did you push through them?
Wow. Okay. So I'm a non-technical founder, and that for anybody who doesn't know what that means I
It's
don't
okay. You don't
code.
have to
Yeah.
be. You don't have to be.
Yeah. I'm not a developer. I don't think I could write a line of code if my life depended on it.
I'm in tech too, and I'm a founder, and I'm not a tech person.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm not that. So I think the biggest challenge for me was finding the right people because
Mm-hmm.
and that took probably about 6 months because
Mm,
I interviewed a lot of different people and some of them were like, well, why don't you just record it on your phone or why don't you just use YouTube? And it's like, but those things already exist and they don't solve my specific problem.
mm-hmm.
And so I met with a lot of people who weren't about solving the actual problem, but band-aiding it with something that already existed. So which tells me
Mm,
you're not interested in building it. And then
yeah.
So I think that was the hardest part. And I think one of the other things that's always challenging as a founder is funding, you know, getting investors and or bootstrapping. So that's always a challenge because there's so much we could do faster
Yeah.
and bigger if we had unlimited funds.
Yeah, it's funny what you just said. I work with startups all the time that are trying to build technology, and the founders usually are not super techy and they don't know the best approaches. They're always going offshore, and they know they're taking a risk, and they don't really know like how to go about it. That's why it's really good to work with a company who has products that they've built from the ground up and can guide you through that process, even if you want to like offshore. For the people that are listening that are looking to do something like you did, even if you're looking to offshore, hire a development company that knows the processes for going through that and will manage that offshore company for you and make sure that that offshore company is building to spec and that they're doing everything according to like the generic
Yeah.
process that you have to go through. Because I do find like a lot of the companies we work with, that's their biggest struggle. They've built something offshore and they got something delivered that was completely the opposite of what they were looking for, and they spent all
Yeah.
this money and didn't get what they wanted, right? So it's a huge risk, especially when you're a founder who's passionate about your idea and you don't really know where to start, right?
Yeah. I meet with my team regularly. Like we have our regular weekly meetings and we are constantly communicating on the daily on things. And so everybody's input is certainly of value.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it having that right team and people that are really good communicators is essential. If what I learned is if I can't communicate my vision and they understand it in an initial couple meetings, then that's probably not a good fit.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
so I agree, you know, when you find either individuals or an existing team of like making sure that the communication is there and that it's open in two ways and they're not just saying yes and then delivering something 6 months later that's wrong. Like we have regular
Yeah.
check-ins and I can see, you know, I can constantly see the work in progress. So it's not like all of a sudden I get something and it's like, what? I didn't order a restaurant app, you
Yeah.
know, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
for sure.
You know, but I think you made another point that I wanted to bring up because I agree with that. And but also depending on what the idea is for a founder is owning your intellectual property. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that we can hire, but they want to be able to, you know, go in freelance or work with other companies and use that that tech for somebody
Yeah.
else. And it's like, no, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's such a
So
great point that you just made. Is there documentation in place and agreements to protect you and your idea? Because
exactly.
especially if they're offshore, you're not going to know if they're reusing your application, right?
Yeah, and also, you know, having people like I'm a fan of having a team that I can meet face to face with in real life, and I also recognize that post COVID, that's not always possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as received by everybody the same way as it used to be, you
Yeah.
know, 10 years ago or something. So getting also used to working remotely from individuals on your team and things like that and really learning to communicate in new ways to keep that open is really crucial.
Yeah. It's challenging as well. I
Yeah.
personally I don't like working from home and remote teams, but you at this
Yeah.
point we have no choice, right?
I know. It's like it's interesting journey. Yeah.
Yeah. You went back to school for a master's in innovation and entrepreneurship. What were some of the most valuable lessons you learned from that experience, and how did it shape the way you built Plauzzable?
I think some of my most valuable thing there's a lot I didn't know. So, I mean, I went back to school at the age of 50. So I had I did my undergrad. I graduated, like, many moons ago, right? And
Hmm.
so I had all this time in between, and I have worked for a Fortune 500 for nearly 13 years. I had worked for other smaller companies. I've worked, you know, in different industries, and I think going back to school for this particular degree I didn't know about entrepreneurship in general. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had some relatives and stuff who had their own small businesses and everything, but I didn't know about incubators, accelerators, all the ins and the outs of the ecosystem that, are so abundant or seemingly
Mm-hmm.
abundant today,
Yeah.
right? And all of that kind of stuff. Cause they were like an incubator and accelerator. I'm like, I have no ideas if we're talking about farm animals like chickens or what are we talking about here? And so I had to learn a lot about the ecosystem and who's who. And I learned, we had a whole class on venture capital and,
Mm-hmm.
all the
Yeah.
investment aspects of it and a whole, approaching finances differently. I had done some light bookkeeping in the past, but on a much grander scale for this, in this master program. And so there was a lot I think that was really valuable. And also in just kind of like getting out of the mindset of asking other people for permission, to do
Mm-hmm.
things because now I'm in control and I'm in the driver's seat. And I think sometimes, especially as students, we get inundated with a lot of like, here's how you should and stuff like that. So filtering through that and then, you know, knowing also the problem that you're solving, don't get hung up on what somebody else thinks the problem is versus what your users are. So that all of those things come together, so there was quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then you had a
Did
second
you
part.
did you end up going through an incubator at all?
Yeah, I went
Okay.
through, after I graduated, I got into, Wayfinder, which is an incubator accelerator, program, and then from there, I got into another one, the Long Beach Accelerator, and then when I was in California at the time because I went to University of California, Irvine, and then I eventually moved to Seattle, and when I got to Seattle, I applied and got in for the WTIA Accelerator or Founders
Mm-hmm.
Program, and that's a Washington Technology Industry Association, and so that was really helpful. And then, I became a part of another Founders Program with 360 Social Impact out here in Washington. So a variety of them, and they all
Mm-hmm.
offer different types of support and resources. And I think that's really like looking at like why so many. I think different people and different entities offer different types of support that we need at various stages of the life cycle.
Yeah, for sure. So you sort of disrupted an industry that has never been disrupted before. I mean, there's Netflix that has pre-recorded stuff and you can watch stand up on it, but the way you're doing it is something completely new and
Mhm.
different. How difficult was it to get the performers to be part like did you have to do any convincing? How did you get them to be part of the platform?
Yeah. I so when I think of comedians, I segment them into kind of life stages of where they at in their comedy career. And then
Mm-hmm.
I targeted specific people to begin with instead of just like all comedians. And used my existing network because I've been doing comedy for over 20 years. So fortunately, I had a lot of reach just by with who I knew. And those people, there are people who signed up day one, the minute we launched. And then we just continued to grow ever since. And so we get signups all the time. But to your more specific question of like, how difficult is it to change the mindset? Because comedians are like,
Mm-hmm.
why would I go online? I can do this in person. Thank goodness the pandemic happened because people started oh, I can do
Knocking on your door.
more, right? It's an opportunity. It's not a replacement. It's a bridge. There's a gap that
Yeah.
could be filled, but you can use online to work out material and try new things, reach an audience that may never come to your geographic location. There's so many things. Um, and so in some cases, depending on where that person is in their comedy career, they might be like, I'm never going back online, unless the
Mm,
world shuts down again. There are people like that. And then there are other people who aren't tech savvy, so logging in and remembering their email, or people who don't know how to use a scroll function to scroll down to see further
yeah.
on the web page. Maybe this isn't for them. And so I focus on the people that are into understanding the bigger picture of what this could
Mm-hmm.
offer them. And those people are relatively easy too. They're like, oh, okay. And we offer free training and stuff to answer questions. And I think some of the biggest mindset shifts from comedians comes with they don't have to ask me permission, and yet they continue to ask me permission. It's like, do I need to ask you? How do we go about?
Yeah.
Are you going to book? And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, it's software. Do you call Mr. Zoom or do you call
Mhm.
Mr. Etsy, or
Yeah.
Mrs. Google Meet and say, can I do a search? No, you just log in and you do your.
Yeah.
So I think, changing, like you say, we're changing the way things are
Yeah.
done. And people are like, oh, wait, there's no roadblock. There's no stop sign. I don't have
Mm.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
mean,
habit.
a lot of people have struggled, not just comedians, just performers. So funny you say that because season one, I had an entrepreneur who started a perfume business, very popular perfume business, and he actually was a famous magician. And when COVID hit, he couldn't perform anymore. So he kind of just went and started this business, and it's very successful, but he kind of gave up doing, what he had been doing for years because the platform was not available because of COVID, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity maybe for you to even pivot at some point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people have asked, like, can I do my podcast on there? And it's like, well, you can, you can use it for a lot of different things. And a magician could come on and do a magic show,
Yeah.
the same type of thing. Um, and I'm open for people to experiment on there. Like,
Hmm.
if it solves your problem, let it solve your problem. You know,
Right.
sometimes people use band-aids, not just for like a cut or bruise. Maybe it's to cover up a birthmark or to, do something like
Yeah.
or hold paper together. I don't know. But if it solves a problem, then I say, let's try it. Let's see if
Yeah.
that works for you. And, even musicians have had trouble with some of the online things of audio delays and cutouts. And some of my performers are also musicians and they're like, "Hey, I don't notice the problem with that here." And I'm like, "You're welcome to try it."
Mm. Yeah.
So, I love to see people who um are open to and curious and approach it with like, "What else can I do on here?" You
Yeah.
know? What does this button do? What does this do? And go in and experiment and see how they can
Yeah.
change everything with just in what they're putting out into the world.
So, do you have a pivot in mind that you want to share with us? Or no, you're just kind of going
No,
with the flow right now?
I don't think it's I don't really have a pivot in mind. I think the platform right now is focused on comedy because um comedy is like people think, oh, that's really niche, but is it?
Mm.
Comedy is the second most popular streaming genre, only second behind breaking news.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, how many
Mm.
people are like, "Oh, I don't like laughing." I'm like,
This is true.
right? So it's like people, how many people are like, "I don't like music." Well, maybe they don't like a type of music, but in general, most people like music. So comedy is a huge, huge market. The Tam Sam song is like mind blowing. And then people are like,
Mm.
oh yeah, like and the thing is that's why streaming services like Netflix, they had just started doing stand-up specials. And then all of a sudden, even before COVID, they started increasing the number and amount of money they were investing in those because they saw that
That's
people,
true.
you know, they
Yeah.
saw the numbers and they're like, whoa, these are really popular. And so, there's this. And so kind of like, I don't know if I'd call it a pivot. Maybe, I don't know, you tell me. But if we could do this for comedy, like other performers, why can't you come in here and do your music on here? Why couldn't you
Yeah.
do? Because you're going to need the same, you need a virtual stage, you need a scheduling system, you need a
Yeah.
ticketing service, and we already have it all. So I
Yeah.
don't have to change, you know,
That
the
much on the
whole.
platform.
Right.
It's
Mhm.
just the marketing part of it, right?
Right. And
Marketing to
it
that audience.
right.
Yeah. I
Exactly.
mean, I think there's an opportunity. I could see a million opportunities now, but I
Mhm.
definitely think that's one for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
over time, yes, you're a comedian yourself and you sort of built this out kind of for yourself, and you also know the industry really well. But, in the next 10 years, where do you want to be with this application?
Yeah, I think it could be used in general in entertainment. So
Mm-hmm.
broaden that, whatever type of performer that is. I think it can be used on a much, much broader sense in the world of
Mm-hmm.
entertainment in general. So not just comedy, but other
Yeah,
types of performances. Absolutely.
I agree. So I have experience building startups a ton. I've built two, and I help entrepreneurs build their own. And one thing that always happens during the process of building a startup, there's always a lesson to be learned somewhere. Something went wrong, and you had to learn from it. Sometimes it's a failure, sometimes it's not. Can you share, one of the biggest lessons learned in your journey so far? And what came out of it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's listening to my gut. I
Mm,
think oftentimes, like I went to school and it's like all the research, all the data, all of this, all of that. And that is all very, very important, right? And I think we get a lot of great advice uh from people, on our team. Our team gives us advice, our investors give us advice, our board gives us advice, all of these people, we put this together. But what I think is I've always listened to my customers or my users, my ideal users. What are their wants and needs, and what do they want the most? What do they need the
mm,
most? What is the problem I'm solving? Going back there, following my gut, because every time I have, and I'm not saying every time, like the couple few times that I've really been like, well, maybe if I just go this other direction against what my initial thinking was, I'm like,
mm-hmm.
should have just went with what I initially planned for it. And I've
Yeah.
like, and you just, okay, well, and then how do I go back to that? How do I get back there? And what can I do with this? So that's kind of it. But I think we underestimate the value sometimes of a good hunch.
Yeah, for sure. So was there ever a moment in your journey where you wanted to give up? Did it ever get to that point?
Yeah. Like I would be lying if
How
I
did you
said
come
that.
out of that?
Yeah, I think, and I don't think it's like a one-off. I think there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
days where I wake up and I'm like, "What, wouldn't it be nice to just like pack up and like, do a 9 to 5 and not like have all of this,
Yeah.
but and I could. That's just it. Like I could just put out my resume and do that. But what stops me is like, I'm not done yet. Like I feel
Mm,
this is this is my purpose. This is what I'm here to do. I believe in it. And sure, I have days where I'm like, what am I, like, are you kidding me? This is so hard. And then it's like, what am I doing this for? And then as soon as I go, what am I doing this for? I look around and I'm like, oh, right. I know exactly why I'm doing this. I believe in this. I
yeah.
believe in this product. I believe in the service that I'm building. So, and that's what keeps me going every time.
I love it. As someone who's lived both the artist's life and the founder's life, what are some common misconceptions people have about starting a business in the creative space?
One of the things that I see, I'm not a person who gives up a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like, even with like comedy, I was like, you hear a lot of no's. You don't hear nearly as many laughs as you'd like to sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of rejection, and I think entrepreneurship is the same way. So I think one of the misconceptions that I see other people having is that it's easy and
Mm-hmm.
that success happens quickly. It doesn't.
Yeah.
What appears to be an overnight success for some has probably been 10 to 20 years in the making in reality. And I think what people don't see beneath all of the Instagram posts and social media stuff out there is that there's a lot of days where people go, what am I doing this for?
Mm,
Maybe I should quit. There's a lot of
mm-hmm.
days of sitting there, sharpening the pencil and working numbers for hours on end. There's a lot of days where you're debating ideas and hashing out how to fix something. Like there's just a lot that goes into it, and it's not one thing. You kind of have to wear all the hats, whether you like those hats or not,
Yeah.
whether you're an expert in those things or not, and you just have to get it done.
Yeah.
And I think a misconception with a lot of people, if it's not easy, then it's not gonna happen, and I couldn't disagree more.
Mm. So before we wrap up, I just want to talk about women in tech because,
Mm.
it's such a male-dominated space and there's more and more female founders coming up. But whenever I have a female founder, I always want to talk about that a little bit because it can be a really lonely place. I know it was for me when I first started out. Do you find that because like I don't know, so I'm sort of going to ask like a whole bunch of questions in one, so bear with me. Did you find that going through an incubator, you got more support? Was there a lot of females there, or did you ever feel really alone?
Um, so I think that there were a lot of females in the incubators and accelerators I've been a part of. There was
Mm-hmm.
a large number actually. Um, and that was really great. And that was something that was talked about a lot. And to the so I didn't see I mean, I worked in construction. I worked for a home builder for 13 years. So I
Ah,
worked like in a
in a
I
male-dominated space.
right? And then in comedy, I mean, come on. Same thing. So I don't know. I think so for me, the aloneness part comes from working remotely more than
Mm,
anything else. And I think that as much of much time as we spent online, because some of these things were done remote during COVID and whatnot, that we had and the opportunity to make connection. Um, I think because the online presence was so new during that time that not
mm-hmm,
everybody was proficient at it. And not a lot of people didn't turn their cameras on, and a lot of people just hopped off right after. They didn't stay for camaraderie or community, socialization or anything like that. And
mm-hmm.
then when if it's suggested, they're like, "Why would I do that?" Because that's how we socialize right now.
Yeah,
So I think some of those opportunities were missed in those cases. So I'd say in general, I think working remotely is
yeah.
hard the hardest part of it, and I don't think it has anything to do with me being a female. Maybe, but I don't know. I
Probably
wouldn't
not.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably not. I think it's just in general, and it's because 'cause there'd be days where my husband would come home from work, and I'm like, "I haven't left the house in, like, 4 days or, 10. I don't even
Yeah.
know anymore." So, yeah, I think that's a big thing.
I mean, during COVID, our office was obviously closed, but I came to the office every day because I was only like 5 minutes away, and I just needed to continue that routine. Even though there was
Mhm.
no one at the office, I was still here alone, but I just at least needed to get out of the house of the four walls and just feel like I had some sort of normality because I couldn't do it. I did 2 weeks at home and I was going crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And, and it's funny. So I was out and about all of the time before COVID. And so when COVID came, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I could do this. Like, I'm totally fine. Um, and I felt like kind of the opposite of like, I'm totally fine doing my routine in here and everything. But now I see the effects of that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I've changed. Like I have
Mm,
really changed. And so yeah, so now I just find connections and I make a point now of um, as a founder, especially, and now that things have opened up again, I went back to my gym membership and I have a community there that I'm getting to know again. And I, belong to a running group and I get to know people there. And I think having things outside of entrepreneurship is really key
mm,
for me because there's a lot of with the accelerators and programs and networking events, they're great. Don't get me wrong, because there is a time and place. But I really love meeting people where they're not like, what do you do? Let's do a transaction.
mm.
Like, I just want to go and be like, hey, how was your morning? Or, hey, do you
Yeah.
want to grab coffee and talk about, what you're binge watching this week? Like, I
Yeah.
love those kind of connections. And sometimes from those, I find the people I want to work with.
Yeah. You don't want to be giving your elevator pitch every 5 minutes.
Oh gosh, it's exhausting. No, I get tired of hearing myself talk. Like, I'm like,
Yeah,
"No."
sometimes I go to like entrepreneur networking events and then like 10 minutes in, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. How many more times are people going to come to me like, so what do you do? And then you give your pitch. You're like, oh man, this is not fun.
Right? It's like, can we just talk about, have you seen, such and such movie, or are you seen this series? Like just a normal, honestly, I try to engage with people sometimes that way at network meetings, and
Hmm.
some I've made some really nice friends from, but other people get put off by it, and they're like, I need to make a sale. And I'm like, you do that. Like you're not my
You go
people.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I just like, but that's the other thing is sometimes uh what I've learned well before entrepreneurship and when I first started out working a regular job is just getting to know and building really good personal relationships with people I work with. Suddenly
Mm,
we work together really well. We
yeah.
like each other. We can communicate without feeling like you have to sandwich, what you want into a bunch of like nonsense to like get your point across.
Hmm.
You can be more candid and there's no feelings hurt. And I love those things. Some of the people I worked with at a company for nearly 13 years. We're still friends 25 years
Mm,
later because and when we were working together, we were winning all kinds of awards and stuff because we had fun.
yeah.
It didn't feel like work, and it wasn't because we were all like in an open space with a yoga ball, but we actually we actually could carry a conversation beyond what do you do and what time you
Yeah.
leave in. Yeah.
So we're coming up on time. I'm going to ask you one last question. For aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those thinking of turning their passion into a business, what's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you before you started Plauzzable?
Have lots of money in your bank account.
That's a good one. I wish I had that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you said you've mentioned you have investors. How difficult it was for you to pitch and raise capital?
Well, it's funny because it kinda happened it's kinda like dating, it happens when you're not expecting it to, and you're
Mm.
not. So, it's like, "Oh, wait, what?" Is kinda how it happened, initially, and so I was in the incubator right after graduation, and from there, I went to they have workshops and things where you can network and learn
Hmm.
new things, and through those, I met someone who sat on the board for an accelerator. And then she was like, "Hey, you're applying to this accelerator." I'm like, of course." So I did. And that accelerator came with pre seed money. And
Oh, nice.
so I was able to, I went in and I did all the things I learned in school and had been practicing and went in and pitched and it clicked, it worked. It was a really good fit, and it was a really great experience, and thank God because of that, I could hire I could hire people, and I could
Yeah.
actually build something, launch it, and get all my users, and that's how I got it started through that accelerator program.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Leanne, thank you so much for joining me today. I always I love all my guests, but I love having like people that are in technology because I'm in technology. And I always find it
Yeah.
that for me, these are the most fascinating conversations because we're like techies and super nerdy sometimes.
Yes.
But thank you so much for sharing your journey and being open to go through it. I appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure, and, yeah, I hope to talk to you again real soon.
Yeah, for sure. I want to thank Leanne for joining me today. Your journey from comedian to entrepreneur is proof that when you see a gap in the industry and you're willing to take risks and put in the work, you can build something truly changing. Whether you're a founder, a creative, or just someone trying to figure out your next big move, I hope today's episode gave you the push to keep going, even when things feel uncertain. Leanne, thank you so much for sharing your story, your lessons, and the tenacity and your tenacity with us today.